On the bustling streets of New York City, neon lights gleamed brightly, illuminating the night sky and reflecting off towering skyscrapers like beacons in a sea of urban life. Below, crowds hurried by, vehicles sped past, and the ceaseless hum of the city created an unending symphony. But just a few floors above this chaos, in a quiet hospital room, only the steady beeping of medical monitors broke the silence. Walter Bennett lay motionless on a stark white bed. Here, there was no place for noise or excitement, only a profound stillness where the line between life and death seemed as fragile as ever. Walter Bennett, a man once regarded as a symbol of success, now appeared as a shadow of his former self. He had been the founding president of a multinational corporation, boasting a fortune worth millions and a dazzling reputation. His motivational speeches had once inspired countless young people eager to follow in his footsteps as a determined, unyielding leader. Yet now, as the glow of his achievements faded, Walter found himself grappling with an overwhelming sense of loneliness. In the twilight of his life, he faced an emotional void, not for lack of material wealth, but from a deep estrangement from those he had loved most. In the early days of his hospital stay, Walter frequently cast hopeful glances toward the door, his eyes filled with faint expectation. He longed for a familiar figure to step into the room, but those hopes were met with nothing but disappointment. His children, once the pride of his life, had become distant shadows. Robert, his eldest son, who had once made him proud by graduating from a prestigious university, had turned into a cold, ambition-driven man who valued goals over relationships. Angel, his daughter, a former art enthusiast with boundless creativity, had become lost in trivial pursuits, letting her life drift aimlessly. Santiago, his youngest son, once clever and resourceful, had grown overly pragmatic and calculating. Walter could not even remember the last time they all sat together as a family, laughing and sharing simple joys. These thoughts consumed Walter day after day, pulling him into a relentless spiral of self-reproach. He questioned himself. Had he been wrong? Had he made a mistake by dedicating his entire life to work, sacrificing everything to build a financial empire, only to be left with this chasm of emptiness? Walter had once believed that money and success would shield his family from hardship, but now all he could feel was an agonizing void. Then, one day, the deafening silence in his room was interrupted by a soft knock at the door. Walter looked up, his heart stirring with a faint glimmer of hope. But it was not one of his children who entered. Instead, a young man with a kind face stepped in, exuding an air of calm reassurance. "Good evening, Mr. Bennett. I'm Andrew, your new nurse." The young man introduced himself with a warm smile. There was something different about Andrew. His genuine demeanor and friendly gaze made Walter pause. It had been so long since he felt that anyone truly cared for him. Walter said nothing, offering only a slight nod. Yet in that brief moment, he felt a small ray of light pierce through the heavy darkness of his solitude. In the days that followed, Andrew became an irreplaceable part of Walter's life. In the cold, sterile hospital room, Andrew brought more than medical care. He brought empathy and understanding. To Walter, it was like a soothing breeze in a vast, barren desert. They spent hours talking, not just about Walter's health, but also about the stories of his life. The vibrant years of his youth, his painful failures, and his deeply regretted relationships. With every story, Andrew not only learned more about Walter's life, but also came to understand the profound pain he carried. The anguish of a father who had become disconnected from his family. One quiet afternoon, as soft sunlight filtered through the window, Walter gently said, "Andrew, if anything happens to me, don't inform my family." Andrew froze, startled by the unexpected statement. He set down his clipboard and looked at Walter, his eyes filled with surprise. "Why would you say that?" he asked softly, careful not to let his unease show. Walter remained silent for a moment, his gaze distant, as though staring at something far away. He took a deep breath and slowly began to explain. "I used to think I had done everything for my family. I worked tirelessly, day and night, ignoring my own health, just to give them a life of comfort and abundance. But I was wrong, Andrew. I didn't realize that money could never replace love or connection. I neglected too much, and now I'm paying the price." His voice grew quieter, tinged with sadness. "Now, I suspect they're not just after my wealth, they might even be plotting to harm me. "They don't care about me, Andrew. They only care about my money." Andrew sat silently, absorbing the weight of Walter's words. Beneath the strong, stoic exterior of this successful man lay a profound sorrow that was both heartbreaking and humbling. Walter's suspicions, though tragic, were something Andrew could not ignore. As a nurse, Andrew had seen his share of heart-wrenching stories, but this one struck a chord that compelled him to act. "Are you sure about this, Mr. Walter?" Andrew asked, trying to remain composed. Walter nodded, his expression weary yet resolute. "I have no concrete proof, but I feel it. Robert and Angel have changed so much. Every time they visit, it's not out of love or concern. It's to push me to sign papers or make decisions that I don't fully understand." Andrew realized he couldn't just listen and walk away. That night, he decided to share Walter's story with Lauren, a colleague he deeply trusted. Lauren, a calm and determined woman, immediately agreed to help. Together, they began to investigate discreetly, keeping a close watch on Robert and Angel whenever they visited Walter. It wasn't long before they noticed suspicious patterns. Lauren observed that Robert often arrived at the hospital looking rushed and tense, repeatedly urging Walter to sign documents he didn't fully comprehend. Meanwhile, Angel, who had once been a passionate and creative artist, now seemed distracted and furtive, often seen whispering with a mysterious man in the hospital's hallways. Andrew and Lauren decided to install a small recording device in Walter's room. The recordings revealed disturbing details, secretive conversations, calculated plans, and even forged documents prepared for Walter's signature. "We have to do something," Lauren said firmly, her eyes filled with determination. "If we let this continue, Mr. Walter won't just lose his wealth. His life could be at risk." But uncovering the truth was far from easy. When Andrew and Lauren attempted to present their findings to lawyers, they faced mounting threats from Robert and Angel's associates. One night, Andrew received an anonymous phone call with a chilling warning. "If you don't back off, the consequences will be severe." Despite the intimidation, neither Andrew nor Lauren wavered. They decided to report everything to the police. After weeks of gathering more evidence and enduring immense pressure, Robert and Angel's scheme was finally exposed. The evidence pointed to their attempts to forge documents and manipulate Walter into transferring his assets. With the intervention of law enforcement, the plot was brought to light. Robert and Angel faced legal charges, and their once elaborate plan crumbled. Walter, though physically frail, felt a relief he hadn't experienced in years. He looked at Andrew and Lauren, his voice hoarse but filled with gratitude. "Thank you. You haven't just saved me, you've restored my faith in humanity." In the days that followed, Walter spent much of his time reflecting on his life. He often sat by the window, gazing at the sky with a contemplative expression. One afternoon, as Andrew came to check on him, Walter said, "Andrew, I used to think that success was everything. I worked myself to the bone to achieve it. But now I realize the most important thing in life is family. Sadly, I've realized it too late." Andrew sat down beside him, listening quietly. "But you can still leave behind a different kind of legacy," he said. "A legacy isn't about wealth, it's about the lessons and love you share." Walter smiled faintly, nodding. "You're right, Andrew. I can't change the past, but I can create something meaningful for the future." In the days that followed, Walter, with Andrew and Lauren's help, began planning a charitable foundation to support elderly individuals who had been abandoned, or those families struggling to care for their loved ones. Walter wanted to ensure that his legacy would be one of kindness and compassion, rather than a source of greed and conflict. Though Walter's time was limited, he found peace in his final days. He not only regained faith in human kindness, but also realized that even in the darkest moments, there is light, if one is willing to open their heart to it. Walter passed away peacefully, leaving behind a will that ensured his entire fortune would be used to establish a center for elderly care. His final wish was not just about providing a place for medical support, but creating a sanctuary for companionship and emotional solace for elderly individuals who had been left behind by society. Walter's vision was simple yet profound, to ensure that no one in their final days would have to feel the same isolation and despair he had endured. Andrew and Lauren, deeply moved by Walter's trust and inspired by his story, took charge of his dream. Together, they worked tirelessly to bring his vision to life. The center, named the Bennett Haven, became a beacon of hope in the community. It wasn't just a nursing home. It was a place where stories were shared, bonds were built, and lives were renewed. The elderly residents, many of whom had experienced abandonment or neglect, found comfort in knowing they were no longer alone. For them, it was more than a facility. It was a home filled with laughter, understanding, and care. The story of Walter's life and his final wish resonated far beyond the walls of the Bennett Haven. It became a poignant reminder of the dangers of ambition, unchecked by empathy, and the emptiness of success without love. Walter's journey stood as a testament to the enduring truth that wealth and achievements might command respect, but only love and compassion bring true happiness and fulfillment. His decision to dedicate his legacy to others showcased the transformative power of generosity and the importance of valuing human connections. For Andrew and Lauren, Walter's story was more than a task or responsibility. It was a mission. They ensured that every aspect of the Bennett Haven reflected the lessons Walter had imparted. The residents were treated with dignity and respect, their voices heard, and their needs prioritized. The center also provided a space for the community to volunteer, bridging generations and fostering empathy among people of all ages. Walter's legacy didn't end with his passing. It grew with every life touched by the Bennett Haven. Elderly individuals found hope and companionship, families were inspired to reconnect, and the community learned the true meaning of compassion. Walter's story became a catalyst for change, sparking conversations about the importance of family, kindness, and the need to care for those often forgotten. If this story has touched your heart, consider subscribing to Life Stories 365 to hear more meaningful tales like Walter's. Help us share messages of compassion, empathy, and the value of human connections. Don't forget to click the like button and share the story with your loved ones, because sometimes a single story can change someone's entire life. Together, let's spread hope and make the world a kinder place.